Welcome to the Power Foods Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Joe, mind and body strategist and fitness nutrition specialist. You're listening to episode 229, the Power Foods Lifestyle Basics. I hope you've already subscribed to the Power Foods Lifestyle blog over at powerfoodslifestyleblog.com. That's where I'm putting written versions of each podcast, making additional posts with PFL recipes, and giving out little tidbits that you just may enjoy. So be sure to use that search bar. You may just find answers to questions you have about nutrition. Today's topic is getting back to the basics of the Power Foods lifestyle. Now, I'd like you to be able to access the download for the freebie that I'm going to be talking about on this episode and referring to. So you can go download that for free by going to Power Foods Lifestyle Champions and requesting to join this private group. Once you're inside, I do believe you'll need to access this on your desktop or your laptop if you want to print it, but just go to the left hand side, click on files, and then you can actually download the file of the Power Foods Lifestyle Basics. If you are also listening to this in the blog, it's the exact same place. You've got to go over to the Facebook group. That's where this freebie is going to be located. Now, whenever we are confused about nutrition, we have tried a lot of different approaches. We may feel as though there is just no simple way to understand nutrition. And I am with you. It is very discouraging and overwhelming when there are so many approaches out there. Now, while I probably could break down every single nutritional approach and look at the pros and the cons of it, as well as what's missing in what they're looking at nutrient-wise or what its strengths are, what we want to do is come up with a simplified, very doable way for each of us to reach our goals. And that's what the Power Foods Lifestyle is going to help you do. It is not a one-way approach of eating. Rather, it's a formulaic, principle-driven methodology of eating that essentially, think of it like an umbrella. That all of these styles of eating that I'm sure you've heard of, from keto to carb cycling to veganism to paleo or high carb or more bodybuilding type style eating, Weight Watchers, any approach could fall under the umbrella of Power Foods Lifestyle. Now, in order for it to be PFL, you actually have to be following the principles and using the vernacular. The principles are going to be those things that help us make better choices based on the scientific information available at this time, which, as I am staying up on the latest research, anytime a principle needs to be adjusted, I adjust it, and I have no problem doing that, and want you guys to be clear that the things I am teaching are the most up-to-date information. And as new research comes out, we have to be willing to open our minds and be versatile and willing to adapt. So that's one reason I'm very glad you're listening to this podcast episode today. Okay, once you have this freebie, the very first page you're going to see is the Power Foods Lifestyle Foods List. This list is simply broken into macronutrient groups. So proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Macronutrient means big nutrient. This is what gives the calories to the food that you eat. While you may be a fan of calorie counting, and absolutely calories do matter when it comes to body composition, calories in, calories out, there's much more to the story. What are the building blocks and the chemicals that are comprising those calories? What we want to seek to do is to find a really great balance between eating proper, healthy, nutrient-dense foods, in other words, what I call power foods, things that grow from the earth naturally or naturally put on the earth, and still having a normal, somewhat life where we can enjoy the foods of this day and age and all of the wonderful creations that are out there. Just this morning, I was on a coaching call and the individual said, I really do find great pleasure in food. And I said, and I'm not asking you to stop finding that pleasure. Let's just seek to tip the balance. So A, we can start learning to love our really nutrient-dense foods that are built to keep our bodies healthy and sustained, as well as enjoying those other foods in a moderate, indulgent way. And I will discuss those strategies in just a moment. So back to macronutrients. That's how I've broken down this foods list. So you'll see proteins, which I represent with a P acronym. Veggies are a V. Carbohydrates are a C. And fats are an F. Now you may wonder, aren't veggies carbohydrates? Shouldn't they be under the carbohydrates category? Why are they their own? So veggies technically are not a macronutrient. They are carbohydrates, but they are much lower in density. So low impact carbohydrates. You really can't compare on a protein, fats, carbs, and calories level a cup of like cucumber compared to a cup of sweet potato. They're not even in the same ballpark of density and energy. So veggies for the most part are just in the V category, and starchier carbohydrates that you may think are a vegetable, and that may just take a little bit of time to channel that over to a new way of thinking, those will be under the carbohydrates category. Now through this foods list, it's going to help you understand proper food combining in 3 types of meals. Now this is the baseline, this is the foundation of Power Foods Lifestyle. Please remember there are adaptations, but this is the simplicity. 3 meal types: PVF, so a source of protein, source of veggie, source of fat; PVC, source of protein, veggie, and carb, or combine those energy nutrients of fats and carbs by doing a PVFC meal. The PV, the protein veggie, is the anchor to every meal, where carbs and fats are energy nutrient add-ons. The best place to start is by circling 3 foods in each category you already routinely eat and enjoy. Let's keep a good thing going. Keep those in your intake. Now, each meal, when meal planning, by the way, most people do really well when they put an alarm in their phone for sometime on Saturday or Sunday or the day preceding any grocery shopping. And that alarm reminds them to plan out their meals, or at the very minimum, moms, you may really like this approach. This works well for the majority of people, is to at least plan out dinners so that you know what you're going to be having. You know the foods that you need to purchase for the week and have in the fridge, have in the pantry. And then when you're circling the foods that you would like to have in the house and available, because then you have the basics to create other PVC, PVF, PVCF meals, then you can start piecemealing those together if you'd like. Now, of course, if you're going on a very strategic weight loss journey, I'd recommend planning out all of your meals. But if you're simply trying to do better and improve your habits, then at least plan out the dinners, and that's a great place to start. So once you've identified 3 foods in each macronutrient category that you're already doing well and you enjoy eating, then go through each macro list, vegetables included, and maybe put a star by 1 or 2 others that you'd like to try incorporating for the upcoming week. Now, this is a great place to cycle foods in and out depending on their seasonality. This may also be a good place to rotate different foods in based on any symptoms or conditions you're experiencing, or any particular influx of nutrients you're trying to give your body for specific goals. For example, if you were someone trying to really improve your GI tract and you were dealing with some irritable bowel syndrome, then I would probably stay away from rotating in dairy-based foods, and so stick to the other foods. And that's what this list makes it easy. Just maybe draw a line through those foods that you know that you particularly should stay away from, that aren't right for you. That's how we can eliminate gluten-containing foods for those who need to be gluten-free or dairy-free. Or if you have an allergy, just simply take a pencil, draw a line through that food, and then you just choose from the other foods. Now, because this is not a finite list, I kept it very simple as to not be overwhelming. You can absolutely add other foods to increase the robustness of these lists as you are learning and improving in the Power Foods lifestyle. So feel free to add, just know that they are absolutely not finite. Let's keep it simple though. So I've put the most basic, well-known foods on that list. Now, while total daily macronutrient grams and calories do absolutely matter in body composition changes, what I like about this straightforward formula of teaching you PVC, PVF, or PVCF meals every 3 to 4 hours, it's so effective and will help you to balance your blood sugar, fuel your brain, give you stable energy throughout the day, and you will be shocked at how this over time will reduce many other symptoms that you've been experiencing. The key is for you to start, then optimize with additional education that I have here on the podcast or on the blog, or of course I am still doing private coaching on a limited level for the next few months with my baby coming, until we kind of get the ball rolling and understand the schedule and all that adaptation. But you can reach out to me at powerfoodslifestyle@gmail.com. I am rotating between 5 to about 10 clients, doing weekly coaching calls, and that's where we can optimize what you're doing, get you a plan, have that daily check-in and support. And it's just been a really great approach for a lot of people. So if you want to reserve your spot and get in immediately, then make sure you email me and reach out, and we will figure that out with the arrival of the baby. Now back to one other important part of page 1. I'm going to give you something I refer to as peak ranges, P-E-A-K, that kind of peak. Now this is what I have over the years just really, really refined into what a proper, if I can even quote unquote that, proper portion size looks like, assuming that you're going to be eating anywhere from 4 to 6 of these types of meals and landing in a pretty average caloric range. This is built on about a 1,500 to 1,800 calorie intake goal. And so that's where nuance does come in. And again, I'm trying to keep this very simple. This is a great starting place. So those peak ranges for each meal: 15 to 30 grams of protein per meal, 1 to 2 cups or so. I like the word ish per meal, because a cup of asparagus is different than a cup of peas or a cup of jicama. And so, just kind of based on what you think a good portion or serving is, that's fine. Where, 2 to 3 cups of spinach is not the same as 2 to 3 cups of carrots. So just kind of use your wisdom on that. Carbohydrates peak ranges is 20 to 30 grams of carbohydrates per PVC meal. So if you're not having a PVC meal, then you shouldn't have a food from the carbohydrate category. And fats would be 8 to 12 grams of fat per PVF meal. So some people get confused and think those ranges are for the entire meal. And the answer to that is no, it's not. Don't add up the total meal. All I want you to do is learn the food and what the serving size of that food is. For instance, if I was choosing to have a PVF meal with an avocado, then I would only look for the avocado, which is the power fat of that meal, to be between 8 to 12 grams of fat. If the protein happened to be chicken and there's a few grams of fat in that, and I chose to have a big leafy green salad with some tomato for the veggie, then I would not add in any of those fat grams. That would not count towards my 8 to 12 grams of fat per meal. It only comes from the food from which that macronutrient group is associated. I hope that makes sense. Now, I do recommend for the first 1 to 2 weeks of learning Power Foods Lifestyle that you use a food scale and look these foods up on the MyFitnessPal app on your phone, or there's other great macro apps you can use, or www.nutritiondata.com. And this will help you begin recognizing, so you can eyeball what a proper portion size is. You will learn really quickly that most meats, to fall within 15 to 30 grams of protein, is going to be about the size of your palm, the thickness, the circumference of that. You're going to learn that for most complex carbs like black beans or rice or lentils or quinoa or oats, that about a half to 2/3 a cup or so is going to fall within that 20 to 30 grams of carbs. And so as you learn, you can just use a pencil or a pen and just write in next to it what an appropriate portion size would be. And that's where the learning really starts to take off and you become an expert. Now on page 2 of my freebie that I'd like you to go download from the Power Foods Lifestyle Champions Facebook group is all about indulgences. We need to ditch the all or nothing thinking so we can reach results. It's extremely rare that I can see an individual reach their goals and sustain them for years to come unless they employ one of these strategies. If they do not, they will turn into yet another person who does the diet fall off the wagon cycle. A true lifestyle change doesn't have that. Yes, you may have times of more intensity. Now, the training on the different tiers of the Power Foods lifestyle is something that we can discuss in the Facebook group if you have not yet had that training. So many of you wonderful listeners have been through my previous programs and products and training that was available under the name of Body Buddies. And so if you are new here, if you've just been recently introduced to the Power Foods lifestyle, or you need some refreshers, go over to the Facebook group and ask the question and we can jump in there and I can share with you some of the videos there. But I do like that personal interaction, and so I would very much appreciate you going in there and commenting. when it comes to two psychological dispositions and profiles, Gretchen Rubin, who gets the credit for this, she came up with this approach, a moderator and an abstainer. So when I first heard this back in like 2012, 2013, somewhere in that time frame, it really clicked as I was always looking for tools to better understand nutrition for myself as well as to teach others as, my coaching practice was growing. And so this was a really fantastic way to understand it. So moderators, that's going to be 30% of you. Let me just tell you a little bit more about this strategy. 30% of the population will be very good at the moderator strategy. You know you're a moderator if you can't bear the thought of the restriction and abstinence that comes with the abstainer strategy. Of course, I'm talking about restriction and abstinence from those foods that don't serve our bodies, those foods that perhaps you've been programmed to call junk food, sugary food, desserts, processed foods, and so forth. Just essentially anything that's not going to be perfect fuel for your body. You know you can control yourself, and you know you can watch your portions. That's how you really know you're a moderator. You want something to look forward to or even reward yourself with on a daily basis. This helps you be more consistent in your weight loss goals and lifestyle change. Moderation is more desirable on the maintenance level of a lifestyle change as it affords flexibility without getting off track. So ultimately, I'd like to see you guys steer yourself in this direction, but I'll talk about the abstainer approach and that there's nothing wrong with it in just a moment. So a few keynotes to know about moderator strategy. You should enjoy one indulgence daily at any time of day. Don't limit yourself or say it has to be within these hours. No, if there is a time that works better for you, psychologically, physiologically, maybe it's after a workout. Yeah, we could talk more optimality, but right now I'm trying to get you started. Any time of day that you need it, maybe it's last thing, like you need a snack at the end of the day, maybe it's right after classes, maybe it's when kids are sleeping, perhaps it's in the morning, whatever works for you. Pair your indulgence with a protein veggie anchor for better blood sugar stability and feelings of fullness. Your indulgence should be no larger than 20 to 30 grams of total carbohydrates for a carb choice and no more than 8 to 12 grams of fat for a keto-friendly fat choice. If you're doing keto or low carb approach, then I don't want you to hit 20 to 30 grams of carbs. You may need to choose something more from the power fats department and so forth, and just maybe indulge in a manner of not sticking to perfect portion size. And that's more of a strategy-friendly approach for those who are not really doing carbohydrates. Now, you don't have to use the moderator option every single day, but you know you can if you need it. And that is so much freedom to be able to make that choice every single day. For those of you who are going to be abstainers, that's 70% of you. I was an abstainer for a very, very long time. And it was not until a few years into practicing these strategies that I began to watch this evolution of myself, and I started to become slowly a moderator. And I began feeling a shift in my emotions towards food, my psychological disposition towards food, that I could do a moderator strategy without it making me feel as though I had messed up my whole day, I needed to throw the towel in, or that I didn't have control over deciding that enough was enough, that I just needed a small portion and could be very satisfied with that. So abstainers, please know it is possible to shift into a moderator strategy. I have seen it on a few people, just because for most part I try to give people wings, and so it's not like I have personal interaction with people for years on end and can actually watch the intensity of their evolution, so I just don't have a lot of that feedback. If you are one of them, you guys, let me know. If you started out as an abstainer with me years ago and now you watched yourself become a moderator, please let me know. I would love that feedback and that data. So I will just say, based on my experience, it did take years because I did come from an extreme binge personality where I really was all or nothing. So it's possible. I do feel a moderator strategy is the most sustainable on a lifestyle change basis because it allows you the flexibility of being able to roll with the punches of life without beating yourself up or feeling like you're a failure, and you can just rein yourself in when needed. Now, the key to an abstainer indulgence meal is to plan it so you can look forward to it. Try not to use it for a meal that you simply didn't plan well, or maybe you ate outside of your strategy. I don't like it becoming this manipulative tool where it's like, oh, I lost my indulgence meal because I didn't do good today and that sort of thing. No, keep your indulgence meal there. And that's, we're going to have to talk about that in another episode about the psychology there. But be mindful it doesn't become a bargaining chip you're going to plan it, and you're going to stick to it. Now, if you felt you truly didn't earn it when you get to that indulgence meal, then you may decide to own that and say, I don't need this, but I don't want you to feel like you have to yank it away from yourself like a child playing with a toy that's going to cry about it. Like, you have to be very careful with your very unique psychology and seek to understand yourself better. And I'd love to coach you through that if you feel that that's a little bit foggy for you. One other key to an abstainer strategy, please do not weigh yourself for 1 to 2 days following an indulgence meal, as your glycogen stores, which is the stored form of glucose, the sugar that comes in carbohydrates, and your water retention will be higher. So some of the key points to an abstainer strategy: you will enjoy 1 to 2 indulgence meals per week, though only one is recommended when really trying to lose weight. It's not physiologically necessary. Unless you are sub 10% body fat for men and sub maybe 18% body fat for women, it's truly not physiologically necessary. Caloric cycling, that's another conversation, but again, keeping to simplicity in this episode, let's just remember this is mostly for psychological sustainability, so you can keep going long enough to reach your goal. If you try and just bulldoze and be perfect the whole time, chances are you will not sustain it long enough to reach those goals before you have a breaking point. And when you have a breaking point, you won't have a moderate, or even abstainer at that point is a moderate way of enjoying those foods and getting away from that feeling of hyper restriction to the point where you can actually keep going and not just say screw it all. So that's really our goal of having these indulgences. Now, you need to earn your meal through compliant behavior. I talked about that already. If counting macronutrients normally, like if you're in a tier 3 of the Power Foods lifestyle, then do not count macros on the day of your indulgence. The indulgence meal will usually encompass 2 to 3 regular PFL meals. So if you're going to indulge for dinner, stick to your meal plan and your macros the rest of the day. And we don't save up, we don't budget in our indulgence macros, unless you're someone I'm working with very specifically to get ready for something very intense with your body image and composition, and something like a fitness competition or a race or something like that, then usually that's not going to be a principle that applies to you. And finally, respect your indulgence meal by stopping when you feel full. Do not gorge yourself. I know it's easier said than done. For most people, that's going to take 2 to 3 months of practice before you actually feel like you successfully do that. So please don't beat yourself up. If it happens, try not to, but have some kindness towards yourself. And so you will learn, you will, but it takes practice, it takes resilience, it takes getting up and trying again. The third page of this freebie you can go grab over at Power Foods Lifestyle Champions Facebook group is the Triple S. This is the sauces, seasonings, and sweeteners. So I have it listed out, some of my favorites and most frequently used, with the brands for all the different sauces I use, as well as some of the seasonings you need to make sure you have in your kitchen, and then sweeteners that are pretty good to use. And so go grab that freebie. On the 4th and the 5th page, I'm going to break down the veggies. There are 4 categories of vegetables in the Power Foods lifestyle: water-based, cruciferous, miscellaneous, and dark leafy greens. On a perfect ideal day, I'd like you to have a serving of vegetables from each one of those 4 categories. So you need to get familiar with what foods qualify in what category. It's really fun to watch people learn this because it's pretty quick. It won't take you long to start understanding, because I put these together based on simplicity. What makes sense? What's water-based veggies? Well, usually those things that go crunch and water sprays everywhere when you eat them. Cruciferous, it's basically bok choy, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and cabbage. Miscellaneous, anything that doesn't fall in the other categories. And dark leafy greens, as you can imagine, basically anything that is a leafy green. We're talking green leaf lettuce, kale, mustard greens, red leaf lettuce, spinach, arugula, etc. So it will help you. I also have a little information there on nightshade veggies and high fiber veggies. Finally, the 5th page of this freebie is the Power Foods Lifestyle Fruit Guide. And I will teach you about how to eat fruit strategically. You may or may not have heard that fruit can be demonized when it comes to weight loss. And I have a whole podcast episode on that. So go over to powerfoodslifestylepodcast.com and search fruit. And you can find the episode and listen to it there if you'd like the very deep science. But to keep it simple, which is our goal here today, this will list out the lower glycemic fruits, as well as the principle of how to eat fruit. because while it is a carbohydrate, we are not going to eat it in the same amounts as other carbohydrates. So again, it's just learning some simple strategy, and this 5-page document is going to give you everything you need to get started on the Power Foods lifestyle. So head over to Power Foods Lifestyle Champions Facebook group. So if you want that download and that PDF, you're going to have to figure out a way, go to your local library if you don't have a laptop or a computer, and grab that. So I hope this has been helpful for getting you back to the basics, or if you are totally new to the Power Foods lifestyle, I hope it gives you confidence that this is very doable. I teach this to elderly, I teach this to children, teenagers, any age group has been able to take principles from this discussion and understand them and apply them for themselves. And so it's really awesome to be able to share this info with you. Make sure you start using the right words for foods. Some of those things being strategic rather than good or bad, strategic or non-strategic. We indulge, we don't cheat. So some of these are basic little transitions that, though it goes against cultural and even societal programming and norms, I promise you, having coached enough people who psychologically begin to feel a shift in the way they look at food. We start to view food as fuel, not as the enemy, not as something to despise, not as something that has power over us, but as a beautiful, nourishing way to care for our bodies while being able to enjoy some of those finer parts of life that come around food as well. We don't need to hate our bodies. We don't need to hate food. I've been on this journey myself for over 8 years now. And so I can say I totally get it when you're in the throes of it and it sucks and it's so hard and you feel like you're never going to figure it out. But just start on some of these new tools and you will be pleasantly surprised. Keep yourself accountable. Use the Facebook group. There are so many wonderful people in there, and you can tag me, Christy Jo Wenger, with any questions as well. I'm happy to jump in and help. And then of course I am available for private coaching as well. As always, my friends, take it one meal, one workout, and one day at a time. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to leave me a review on iTunes. This helps with getting this information to more people. Thank you again to all the Power Foods Lifestyle supporters. You can become a Patreon supporter of the podcast for as little as $5 a month and get access to even more of the freebies and recipes and handouts and other programs that I have put together. So head over to Patreon and type in Power Foods Lifestyle, or just click the link in my show notes. One last reminder, the information in this episode is provided for informational purposes and is not meant to substitute the advice provided by your own physician or medical professional. See you next time.